Hey there, students, Pythonistas. I'm continuing with my School of Tomorrow, Calculator of Tomorrow. We just, in the last video, did Python generators. And for our topic, we chose a geometric topic, which is, you could say the polyhedral numbers, you could say the figurative numbers, because oftentimes the figurative numbers, like the square numbers, refer to a flat shape. So I could do like s to the second power for s in range, and it's up to but not including the upper bound, right? So if I want to go to 10, I say 11, and I hit enter, and there's my sequence of what we'll call square numbers right underneath it. And then there's triangular numbers and so on. Triangular numbers, by the way, is just, we can do, here's one way, s plus 1 times s all over 2. And since there's already, let's just be very clear how we want this to be parsed and say all over 2 and run it. And so there it's gone to floating point because of divide by 2. If you don't like the floating point, put a double here, double slash I mean, and you get only integers output. So those are flat sequences, and we also can do geometric ones, which is my segue to this not quite cube here. This is a box of Soylent, right? And so I'm not living on this. That was kind of the commercial that you could. But in terms of School of Tomorrow, what if you want Soylent as an option, right? And I'm not saying it has to be in bottles. And it's a good hiking. I took it on a hike once to the top of Bear Mountain. I went with some Boy Scouts. Our little faction was the only group that made it. All the others had to turn back for various reasons. It was pretty grueling and really, really windy at the top. And I had a jug of Soylent in like a milk jug in my backpack. And coming down, it was really steep and slippery. And I was kind of running to hit a tree on purpose to stop me, but if I missed, I'd go over like a cliff, so it wasn't a good thing there either, but I didn't really have the right shoes. And one time I slipped backwards and fell on my own milk jug with Soylent in it. Okay, so what comes, I'm telling the story, but I'm also unpacking. What comes in this box is another box. And this one has all kinds of writing on it, so the outer box is just like brown, but this one is like all covered with information, right? And when I open up this one, so anyway, when I fell on my back, all the Soylent leaked out, and it's white, milky colored, and I really look like that robot in Aliens, if you know what I mean. There's a movie, Aliens, and one of the main characters is actually an android, kind of a Sophia's boyfriend, and he has white blood, and so I kind of, I was kind of pretending I was an android at that moment. Like, hey kids, you thought I was just your scout leader, but I'm actually not even human. Actually, I was just letting them stare at me, really. But unfortunately, no one got hurt. In retrospect, that was a very not so. So what if we had a huge amount of this stuff in a feeding situation, like just for emergencies, right? So 10,000 people show up needing food right away. Do we have like a silo, literal silo, just full of Soylent all the way to the top? Like it's a FEMA thing, right? It sounds very science fiction. Why would we ever want that? Well, first of all, when they make it, they have to have it stored in bulk, right? And then it gets packaged and shipped. But there are already places where Soylent's piled up, right? And the big problem there would be, rodents and stuff. And the opening film where they're attracting venture capital, they acknowledge all these issues. So I'm not like divulging or saying anything. I'm just saying Asylum City would face all the big problems that major industries face when it comes to storing food supplies for large numbers of people, including rodents and things like that. And how airtight can we make our thing, right? Can our silo truly be rodent proof just because this is the 21st century? Are we proud? Yeah, maybe not. Maybe we've gone backwards. When I look at the vista out there, I don't know, maybe we've gone backwards. We don't go to the moon anymore, but that was very expensive. So I was going to do Pascal's triangle this time, and I'm going to do that next. And Pascal's triangle, I'm not going to interfere with the existing generators or making the table. I'm just going to add it right here. Define Pascal. Pascal, famous guy. Read about him. Chemistry, a brilliant guy. He got into also making computing machines, like early calculators. He knew that was coming. Kind of a Charles Babbage in that sense. So shout out to Pascal. Now, his triangle named after him, and I'm not saying you will not find this in ancient Chinese writings and so on, is now Tower of Hanoi, on the other hand, was invented in France, I believe, and imputed to the Vietnamese as a marketing gimmick, you could say. It's not, people do that a lot, you know, they'll make up a game and then they'll be invented in the Himalayas, blah, blah, blah. It's a branding thing. Anyway, onwards. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our Python generator. Let's just put the while true loop. We know we're going to need it. Exactly how, we're going to figure that out. And we're going to yield something called the row, whatever row we're on. Now we know what the first row is going to be. I'm just going to get this thing going with a 1 at the apex. That's usually how you start Pascal's triangle, with a 1. So we roll through this while true loop. And now it's like we've yielded the 1. That was cool. It's time to go down to the next row, which is going to be 1, 1. And here's the trick that I've learned, that, okay, what we want to do is zip up the current row, but with a 0 appended on the end. I'll explain this in a second. And then we want we want to take the row again, but put a 0 in front of it. I could use the insert method of the list and so on. Row is not a function. Row is a list. So what I'm doing is I'm prepending and appending just another member to each list, so they stay the same size, but it's like one gets shoved to the right, one gets shoved to the left with a 0. And what this is going to do, it's kind of stagger the same list on top of itself. So like where I was looking at 1, 1, now I'm looking at 0, 1, 1, and under it 1, 1, 0. And if you mentally add vertically, you'll see that that's the next row of Pascal's triangle. So what I want to do is zip these up, and then what do I want to do? I want to add them, right? So I can do something like next row is going to be the I plus j for ij in this zip thing and close comprehension, and there we may have it there. There's the next row. So let's just run this whole thing top to bottom. At the bottom, I'm just going to go back to saying pass, which means I don't need to run anything when I just hit the green arrow. Let's just define the contents and then test it over here, because what happens is Spider just dumps the content of memory of globals over to this side. So Pascal is now available to me. There it says it's a function, right? Let me hit clear here and get less rollback on the screen. I love Spider for teaching because I can scroll up so easily, because some of these other IDEs are not as perfect for teaching on YouTube, for example. So check it out, Spider. It's part of the Anaconda distro. You can get it freestanding, I'm sure. All right, so let's do it. G equals Pascal, no arguments. It thinks I might want one, maybe. I have to tell it, hey, I'm done with that line. And now, because there's things you could put, let's do next G and see if we get that 1. Okay, so there's just the initial, it ran to the first yield, right? That's its job as a generator. Just, okay, now where's the next yield? You could say, well, there is no next yield. It's already on the last yield. Yeah, but we're talking about in execution space. In other words, it's on a little trail now where it's going around like a train in a circle around a Christmas tree or something. and it's going to have to stop at station stop yield every time around. So the next yield just means whenever you next encounter a yield on your circular path, if it happens to be circular, and it very often is. So we orbit around here and stop at yield every time, but every time our row has gone through a process, and now it's 1, 1, and now it's 1, 2, 1, 1, 3, 3, 1, and so forth. So this is what we mean by Pascal's triangle. These are successive rows of it. And it's a useful meme, like blaze it in as a grand central in your thinking. This won't be the only time you see it. We'll come at it from different angles, but we're going to relate it to Galton boards and bell curves and all this stuff. And if you don't get it through this channel, that's the standard path, right, through the curriculum, is to take Pascal's triangle. You're going to find two sets of figure numbers at first. Triangular and tetrahedral are right there. Let's just get some G equals Pascal. I'll just print the whole triangle here for a bit. We'll just say, what we'll do? We'll do something evil. We'll print inside of a list comprehension to force a loop. We'll say print next G for whatever in range 10, and print that out as a list. It's going to go vertical on us, and that's a pretty good approximation. Now print itself returns none, so there's the line of evil outs. By evil I just mean I'm using side effects here. But look at this, here's the triangle, and if you just read down, you get the sequence 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but there's a cumulative effect going on, which is triangular. So this row going down is going to be triangular numbers. And then this accumulating effect, when you accumulate triangles on top of each other, what are you really building? Well, you're building a tetrahedron. So this line going down is your tetrahedron. You're going to be able to find a Fibonacci's in here in a certain way. You're going to be able to get a lot out of Pascal's triangle, regardless of how you get there. In this trail, we climbed up the Python generator. We needed energy, so I showed you one good option is go to the stores and ask them to fill your jug with Soylent, maybe just the powder for the camping trip, because you're going to have the water sources on the way. So you don't need to pack water, or you do, right? It makes a huge difference. If you're on a hike, find out first if it's pack in your own water or if there's water there, because water's heavy and you can't take a lot of it. I've done a lot of scuba in my life, and you plan your trips ahead of time so you don't run out of whatever, right? Air especially, but there's other stuff to worry about there too, like how long you're going to be at different depths is the number one thing to think about, but then also how cold are you going to get? And are there currents? How far from base are you going to end up? Do you have to swim back? Is that even possible? So just got to think about these things ahead of time. And so that's kind of math too. So some of the scouting math that we do, you have to like hike to get to the next challenge. It's like global positioning or no global positioning, whatever. But in scouting kind of outings, you're outdoors and you're free to maybe choose the order of the tasks and maybe not do some. It's like you mix and match to what you want to get good at, right? So it's not a forced march for everybody, but it's a set of challenges like obstacle courses, or just like Myst or the game Uru. If you've ever played Uru, kind of like that. All right, talk to you soon.